I was just 11 years old when it happened, but the memory is as vivid as if it were yesterday. My school friend Rebecca had invited me for a sleepover, and I was thrilled when my mom agreed. It was my first time spending the night away from home, and I couldn't contain my excitement. Rebecca lived with her mom in a cozy house not far from ours. Her dad had passed away when she was a baby, so it was just the two of them. We had a blast that evening, playing games, gossiping, and enjoying each other's company. As bedtime approached, we got ready in her room, which had a big double bed. I had just changed into my pajamas and brushed my teeth when Rebecca casually mentioned, "Don't freak out if you wake up, and I'm not here. Sometimes I get up in the middle of the night and go sleep with my mom." I nodded, not thinking much of it. After all, I wasn't going to be alone in a strange house. As we lay in bed chatting, my eyes were drawn to something on the wall that I hadn't noticed before. It was an old-fashioned cloth clown, hanging next to the bed. Its colors were faded, a testament to its age. Curious, I asked Rebecca about it. Her eyes lit up as she explained. "Oh, that? My dad gave it to me when I was a baby. I love it because it's one of the few things that make me feel connected to him, you know? Since I never really got to know him." I nodded, understanding the sentiment, but something about the clown made me uneasy. As we continued talking, I found myself growing increasingly restless. The clown was strange, even ugly to my eyes, and I couldn't shake off an eerie feeling. When Rebecca left for the bathroom, I was left alone with the clown. That's when I saw it, or at least, I thought I did. The clown's head seemed to turn slightly, leaning forward with its toothy grin and eyes that appeared unnervingly alive. I froze, unable to breathe for a moment. Instinctively, I pulled the blanket tighter, but it didn't help. Panic set in as I imagined what might happen if Rebecca left in the middle of the night. Would the clown do more than just turn its head? The thought was terrifying. By the time Rebecca returned, I was already up, clutching my backpack, still in my pajamas. She looked confused as I stammered out that I wasn't feeling well and wanted to go home. I asked if her mom could call my parents to pick me up. My parents arrived quickly, and I thanked Rebecca and her mom profusely, insisting that everything had been great, but I just wasn't feeling well. My mother, knowing me better, waited until we were home to ask what really happened. When I told them about the clown, they laughed it off, assuming I was just homesick. But that night was rough. Nightmares plagued my sleep, and since then, my relationship with clowns has never been the same. Years have passed, and I've never told Rebecca the truth. I couldn't bear to tell her that the strongest connection she had to her late father, that old cloth clown, had terrified me so much. Instead, I just avoided going into a room whenever I visited. To this day, I'm not sure what really happened that night. Was it just my imagination, fueled by being in an unfamiliar place? Or was there something more to that old clown, with its faded colors and eerie smile? I may never know for sure, but the memory of that night still sends shivers down my spine. If you are enjoying it, please consider subscribing and clicking the like button to support my channel. I've always loved hiking. There's something about the crisp mountain air and the solitude of the trails that just clears my head. But after what happened to me in the Rockies last summer, I don't know if I'll ever feel safe in the woods again. My name's Kate, and I'm an experienced hiker. I've tackled some pretty challenging trails over the years, so when I planned a solo day hike in a less traveled area of Rocky Mountain National Park, I thought I was prepared for anything. God, how wrong I was. The day started like any other hike. I hit the trail early, around AM, with my backpack full of supplies, water, energy bars, first aid kit, the works. The weather was perfect, not too hot, with a gentle breeze rustling through the pines. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have the trail all to myself. About 2 hours in, I started to get this weird feeling in the pit of my stomach. You know that sensation when you just know something's off, but you can't put your finger on it? Yeah, that. I kept looking over my shoulder, but all I could see was the empty trail winding through the trees behind me. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was being paranoid. But then I heard a twig snapping somewhere off the trail. I froze, my heart suddenly pounding in my chest. "Hello?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is someone there?" No answer. Just the wind in the trees and the distant call of a bird. I picked up my pace, convincing myself it was probably just a deer or something. But deep down, I knew someone was following me. For the next hour, it was like a game of cat and mouse. I'd stop, listen, and hear nothing. Then the moment I started walking again, I'd catch the faintest sound of footsteps behind me, always just out of sight. I was too scared to look back for long, afraid of what or who I might see. My mind was racing. Should I leave the trail? Try to lose them in the dense forest? But I knew that was risky. It would be too easy to get lost, and then I'd be in even more trouble. I decided to stick to the trail, but picked up my pace to a near jog. The sound of a branch breaking nearby made me jump. It was closer this time, way too close. That's when I saw him, just a glimpse through the trees. A man dressed in dark clothes, moving quickly and quietly. My blood ran cold. This wasn't my imagination. This was real, and I was in serious danger. I broke into a run, no longer caring if he knew I'd spotted him. My backpack bounced painfully against my spine as I sprinted down the trail, my boots slipping on loose gravel. I could hear him behind me now, no longer trying to stay quiet. The sound of his heavy footsteps spurred me on, filling me with a panic I'd never experienced before. My lungs were burning, and my legs felt like lead, but I didn't dare slow down. I knew the trail eventually led to a more popular area of the park, but it was still miles away. Would I make it? What if I tripped? The questions raced through my mind as fast as my feet were carrying me down the path. Suddenly, I remembered my phone. In my panic, I'd completely forgotten about it. I fumbled to pull it from my pocket as I ran, nearly dropping it in the process. No signal. Of course. I was too deep in the backcountry. I veered off the trail, hoping to lose him in the thick underbrush. It was risky, I knew, but I was desperate. Branches whipped at my face as I crashed through the forest, my heart pounding so hard, I thought it might burst out of my chest. I don't know how long I ran. Time seemed to stretch and warp, minutes feeling like hours. Eventually, I couldn't hear him anymore, but I didn't stop. I kept going until my legs gave out, and I collapsed behind a fallen tree, gasping for air. As I lay there, trying to catch my breath and stay as quiet as possible, I realized I was completely lost. The dense canopy above me blocked out most of the sky, making it impossible to get my bearings. I was alone in the wilderness, with a potential predator somewhere nearby, and no idea which way led to safety. I stayed hidden for what felt like hours, jumping at every sound, terrified that each rustle of leaves meant he had found me. As the light began to fade, the reality of my situation sank in. I was going to have to spend the night out here. Using the little daylight I had left, I found a spot where I could see the trail in the distance without being easily spotted. I didn't dare light a fire, afraid it would give away my position. Instead, I huddled in my light jacket, shivering as the temperature dropped. That night was the longest of my life. Every snap of a twig, Every whisper of wind sounded like footsteps to my terrified ears. I didn't sleep a wink, my body tense and ready to bolt at any second. As dawn broke, I made my way carefully back to the trail, constantly scanning my surroundings. I walked for hours, jumping at shadows, before I finally heard the blessed sound of voices other hikers. I nearly cried with relief. I reported what happened to the park rangers, but they never found the man who chased me. They said there had been a few similar reports in the area over the past year, but no one had ever been caught. It's been months now, and I still have nightmares about that day. The doctors say I'm dealing with PTSD, which I guess isn't surprising. I haven't been able to go hiking since, even on popular trails. The thought of being alone in the woods again, it's just too much. I know I was lucky. Things could have ended much worse for me out there, but the experience has left its mark. I've always considered myself a rational person. As a software engineer, I deal with logic and code every day. But what happened in our quiet suburban neighborhood last summer shook my beliefs to the core, leaving me questioning everything I thought I knew about reality. It all began when the Mitchell family moved into the vacant house next door. I remember feeling excited about having new neighbors. Maybe they'd have kids my daughter could play with, or we could have barbecues together on weekends. But from the day that moving truck pulled up, things started to feel off. The first sign was Whiskers, my usually laid-back tabby cat. He'd been with us for years, a constant source of calm and affection. But the very night after the Mitchells moved in, he started acting strange. At first, it was subtle. He'd stare intently at empty corners of the room, his tail twitching nervously. I brushed it off, thinking maybe he was just adjusting to the new sounds next door. But then things escalated. One evening, as I was watching TV, Whiskers suddenly arched his back and hissed at thin air, his eyes wide with what I can only describe as pure terror. He darted under the couch, refusing to come out for hours. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was smelling the new neighbor's pet through the walls. But I'd never seen or heard any signs of pets next door. A few nights later, I woke up to Whiskers yowling at my bedroom window. My heart was pounding as I got up to check what was wrong. As I approached the window, I felt an inexplicable chill run down my spine. For a split second, I could have sworn I saw a dark, humanoid shape standing in the Mitchells' yard, staring up at my window. But when I blinked, it was gone. I told myself it was just a trick of the light, a shadow cast by the street lamp. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. Whiskers' behavior only got worse from there. He'd wake me up in the middle of the night, frantically pawing at the bedroom door, as if trying to escape some unseen threat. During the day, he'd sit motionless, staring at the wall we shared with the Mitchells, occasionally letting out low, mournful meows. It was as if he could sense something that I couldn't, and it terrified him. I tried to talk to the Mitchells about it, wondering if maybe they were doing some late-night renovations that could be disturbing Whiskers. But every time I knocked on their door, no one answered, even though I could have sworn I heard movement inside. It was odd. I'd see their car in the driveway, lights on in the house, but it was like they were actively avoiding any interaction with the neighbors. As the days passed, I started noticing other strange things. Sometimes late at night, I'd hear what sounded like chains dragging across a floor, coming from next door. Other times, I'd catch a whiff of an odd, musty smell, like old books and damp earth, even though all my windows were closed. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination running wild, but the knot of unease in my stomach kept growing. One evening, as I was taking out the trash, I noticed something odd about the Mitchells' windows. They seemed different somehow. It took me a moment to realize what was wrong. There were no reflections in them. The streetlights, the moon, nothing was mirrored in those dark panes of glass. I stood there, garbage bag in hand, staring at those unnaturally black windows, feeling like I was losing my grip on reality. The final straw came 3 days ago when Whiskers disappeared. 1 minute, he was curled up on the couch. The next, he was gone. We searched everywhere, put up posters, called local shelters, but it was like he had vanished into thin air. And I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was going on next door had something to do with it. My wife thinks I'm overreacting, that I'm letting my imagination run wild. She says the Mitchells are probably just private people, and Whiskers probably just ran away. But she hasn't seen what I've seen, hasn't felt the oppressive sense of wrongness that seems to emanate from that house. My name is Rachel. I am 28 years old, and I work as an accountant in an office in the city center. It was just another night in my old apartment when the dreams started. At first, they were nothing more than hazy fragments, shadows dancing in the corners of my bedroom, whispers too faint to make out. I'd jolt awake, heart pounding, but quickly brush it off. After all, this building had always been full of strange creaks and groans. But as the nights wore on, the dreams grew more vivid, more terrifying. That's when I first saw him, a man, standing motionless at the foot of my bed. Only he had no face. Where his features should have been, there was just a blur, like someone had taken an eraser to his identity. I tried to scream, but my voice was trapped in my throat. When I finally managed to flick on the bedside lamp, he'd vanish. Soon, the line between dreams and reality started to blur. Even wide awake, I'd feel eyes on me when I was home alone. Footsteps would echo down the hallway, but I'd find no one there. One night, I woke to the distinct sensation of someone sitting on my bed. I could even see the mattress dipping under an invisible weight. But when I turned on the light, the room was empty. The faceless man began appearing in reflections in mirrors, windows, even the blank screen of my turned-off TV. Always just a glimpse, vanishing the moment I tried to focus on him. Desperate for some kind of proof, I started taking photos of my room at night. When I looked at them the next morning, my blood ran cold. There, next to my bed, was a blurry, shadowy figure. I tried to rationalize it away. Maybe it was stress from my new promotion. Maybe I needed to see a doctor about these vivid hallucinations. But the more I denied it, the more intense everything became. The faceless man was in my dreams every single night now, getting closer, more menacing with each encounter. Then came the night that still makes my skin crawl. I woke up gasping, feeling like an elephant was sitting on my chest. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. When I managed to force my eyes open, there he was, the faceless man, looming over me. His blank visage was inches from mine, and even without eyes, I could feel him staring into my soul. I squeezed my eyes shut, silently begging for this to be just another nightmare. When I looked again, he was gone, but the crushing weight on my chest lingered. I haven't had a good night's sleep since then. I'm jumping at shadows, flinching at every unexpected sound. Sometimes I wonder if I'm losing my grip on reality. Other times, I'm convinced there's something supernatural stalking me, something that wears a man's shape, but isn't human at all. My coworkers have noticed the dark circles under my eyes, the way I startle at sudden movements. My best friend Sarah keeps telling me to see a therapist, that I'm probably just dealing with some repressed trauma or anxiety. But how can I explain this to a professional without sounding completely unhinged? I've started sleeping with the lights on, though it doesn't help much. I've even considered moving, but there's this nagging fear that he'll follow me wherever I go. This faceless entity has become a constant presence in my life, lurking just out of sight, waiting. And the worst part, I can't shake this horrible feeling that we're building to something. That these encounters, as terrifying as they've been, are just the prelude to something even worse. What does he want? Why me? And how do you fight something you can't even look in the eye? I don't have any answers. All I know is that every night, as I lie awake in bed, I'm dreading the moment I'll see that blank face again, wondering if this time he'll do more than just watch. I've always considered myself an outdoorsy guy, you know. Camping, hiking, fishing, that's my jam. So when my buddies suggested a weekend trip to Whispering Pines campground, I was all for it. Man, if I'd known what was waiting for us there, I might have thought twice. We rolled up to the campsite just as the sun was dipping below the horizon. The woods were thick around us, towering pines casting long shadows across the clearing. The air had that crisp, clean smell you only get deep in the forest, mixed with wisps of wood smoke from nearby campsites. We got our tents up quick and had a fire crackling in no time. As darkness settled in, we huddled around the flames, trading stories and toasting marshmallows. It was your typical guy's night out in the woods, you know? Laughing, joking, not a care in the world. But then, I don't know how to explain it. This feeling just crept over me, like ice water trickling down my spine. At first, I tried to brush it off. I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere, right? It's natural to feel a little on edge. But this was different. It felt like we weren't alone. I kept glancing towards the edge of our campsite, where the firelight faded into darkness. And that's when I saw it. Just beyond the ring of light there was something. Someone. A figure standing stock still, watching us. My heart started hammering against my ribs. I blinked hard, figuring my eyes were playing tricks on me. But when I looked again, it was still there. Tall, thin, almost blending into the shadows. I couldn't make out any features, but I swear I could feel its eyes on us. I wanted to say something, to alert my friends, but my voice just wouldn't work. It was like my throat had closed up. All I could do was stare, my skin prickling with goosebumps. The figure didn't move, didn't make a sound. It just stood there, watching. But then, God, I'll never forget this. Its head tilted ever so slightly, like it was studying us. The fire popped, sending up a shower of sparks, and for a split second, I thought I saw eyes glinting in the darkness. My friends were still chatting away, completely oblivious. I felt like I was in some kind of nightmare, unable to move or speak. The fear was like a physical weight on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Suddenly, a gust of wind tore through the campsite. The fire danced wildly, and in that moment of confusion, the figure was gone. Just vanished. I leaped to my feet, startling everyone. My eyes darted around the tree line, searching for any sign of the watcher, but there was nothing. When my friends asked what was wrong, I tried to explain. But the words sounded crazy even to me. They exchanged these looks, you know, like they thought I was losing it. I barely slept that night. Every little sound had me on edge, convinced that whatever it was coming back. The rest of the trip passed without incident, but I couldn't relax. Even now, weeks later, I find myself looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see that silent, watching figure. Was it real? A trick of the light and shadow, or something more otherworldly? Thank you for listening. Now try to sleep.